The hall went silent the moment she said it. Juliana stood at the front, fingers locked with a tall man in a navy suit. She lifted their hands like a trophy and spoke in a loud, clear voice that hit every wall of the room. "Thank God he's gone, Johnson. Congratulations to us." Everyone gasped. The golden casket in the center glittered under the chandelier, and the man inside, Billionaire CEO Johnathan Obinna, lay very still. Juliana didn't stop. "All the company documents are with me. Tomorrow we will change the ownership. After that, we travel to Maldives for our honeymoon." A woman in the second row dropped her fan. Someone whispered, "Maldives?" Another whispered, "Ownership?" Jonathan's best friend, Sam, stepped forward, stunned. He had bought the golden casket himself at sunrise. He had chosen the white roses. He had signed invoices with shaking hands. For his best friend, for a befitting funeral. Juliana turned, pointed at the casket, and frowned. "This casket is too expensive. Return it. We will bury him in something cheaper." That was when the room cracked. A few people shouted. One man swore. Another covered his face and cried. Sam's jaw locked. The ushers begged for calm. Cameras flashed. Phones went up. And in that electric hush, the lid of the golden casket creaked. It moved just a little. No one saw it except Sam, who took one slow step, then another, eyes wide. He had helped plan all of this. He knew the truth. He also knew the moment had come. Inside the casket, behind closed eyes and careful breathing, Johnathan felt the room's heat change. He heard the whisper of metal. He heard her voice clear, sharp, proud. He had designed this plan to test a heart. Now the test had spoken. He kept still for 5 long seconds more. Then he opened his eyes. Hours earlier, before the hall filled with roses and people mourning, Lagos still wore the blue of early morning. In a quiet corner of Banana Island, a black car waited with its engine on. The driver checked the time, the gate guard yawned, and inside a study lined with books, Johnathan Obinna stared at a framed wedding photo of himself and Juliana from 10 years ago. 10 years. No children. Countless doctor visits. Whispered prayers. Silent dinners. Smiles in public. Empty rooms at night. Johnathan touched the glass. "If there is any truth left," he said to the air, "today we'll find it." He was not a man who moved without a plan. He ran factories. He signed contracts that fed families. He knew numbers and risk. He knew how to hide fear behind a smile. And for months he had seen small things that did not fit: late-night calls, messages, sudden trips, a name he did not know at first, Johnson. He had felt the cut of it. He had been patient. But patience was not the same as peace. At dawn, he called Sam. "Are you sure?" Sam asked, voice tight. "I am," Johnathan said. "If I'm wrong, I'll be the fool. If I'm right, I will see it with my own eyes." By 7, the private doctor had arrived with the team. By 8, the security detail had their orders. By 9, a selected list of staff received the message, "The boss is gone." The rest of Lagos would hear it by noon. The golden casket arrived under a white cloth. The hall was dressed in white and gold. Johnathan lay inside, a thin line of air coming through a hidden vent, a tiny earpiece in his right ear, and a camera above the chandelier. He could hear the room. He could not see it. At 10, Sam checked the flowers again. He sent a text to the team at the airport. Juliana, who was visiting her parents in Port Harcourt, had boarded the next flight to Lagos. She was not alone. At 11, the first guests arrived, whispering and wiping eyes, stepping softly like the floor could break. By 11:30, the hall had filled with directors, employees, old school friends, aunties, uncles, cousins, and neighbors who remembered the boy from the small house who became the man with 100 doors. At exactly 12, Juliana walked in, holding the hand of a man who was not family. Cameras rose like corn in a field. Sam's heartbeat in his throat. He could not move. "Who is that?" Someone whispered. "That's Johnson," another answered. "He works with a supplier. I've seen him twice." Juliana's face was dry. Her makeup was perfect. Her eyes looked around the room, like it all belonged to her, and then she said the words that shattered the thin, kind stories people tell themselves when they don't want to believe what is true. "Thank God he's gone." In his casket, Johnathan felt the world tilt. The hurt was sharp but clean. He had been living with a dull ache for months. This was different. It was a knife. It told the truth. He stayed still anyway. She kept talking about documents, about ownership, about flights and new names on old papers. She squeezed Johnson's hand. Someone cried out, "Have you no shame?" Juliana lifted her chin higher. Then came the line about the casket. Too expensive. Return it. Bury him cheaper. Sam's hands shook. A memory flashed in his head, two young men in second-hand suits, sharing a plate of rice and making a promise to build a life that mattered. A promise he and Johnathan had kept for 20 years. He took a step toward the casket. "Don't." The head of security whispered, reading the moment, reading the plan. But plans change when pain speaks the truth. The lid creaked. The room snapped to stillness. Juliana's smile froze. Johnson's fingers loosened. Slowly, as if rising from the bottom of the ocean, Johnathan sat up. He did not look at the crowd. He did not look at the flowers. He did not even look at the camera lens in the chandelier. He looked at Juliana, only Juliana, and his eyes were bright with tears he did not wipe away. Juliana's mouth fell open. The color left her face. Her knees bent like someone had cut the strings in them. She made a small sound, like a child waking from a bad dream and finding it was not a dream at all. People started shouting, some with joy, some with shock, some with anger. Phones shook in trembling hands. The room spun and then settled, eyes locked on the man in the golden casket who would not stay dead. Juliana tried to run. Sam moved faster. He blocked her with both arms and a hard, quiet voice. Johnson tried to slip through the crowd, but two private guards stepped in front of him, like doors closing. Johnathan stood every inch of him steady, except for his breathing. He took one step down from the casket, another. The light caught the rails of gold behind him and made him look like he was walking out of the Sunday. He stopped at arm's length from the woman he had married. "What have I ever done to you?" he asked softly. "To deserve this?" Juliana tried to speak, but no sound came. "My father taught me," he said, voice still calm, "that a man can survive a storm, but not a lie inside his home." Johnson swallowed. Sam's fists tightened. The hall was so quiet, the crystal on the chandelier gave a little ring. Johnathan drew a breath, and the next words rose in his chest, and that was when the heavy doors at the back of the hall swung open, and a black-suited figure stepped in, carrying a leather folder with a red seal. Every head turned. Johnathan did not look away from Juliana. He lifted his hand, palm down, fingers steady, and the guards brought Johnson forward to stand beside her. The lawyer came to the front, opened the folder, and held out a single document. Johnathan reached for it, eyes still on Juliana. "Juliana," he said, voice breaking for the first time. "Read this." She stared at the paper like it was a snake. She shook her head. She looked at Johnson. He looked at the floor. "Read," Johnathan said again. Her hands rose, slow, small, shaking. The room leaned in. She took the paper. Her eyes moved over the first line. They widened. Her lips parted. And then, before she could speak, before she could scream, before she could fall, Johnathan turned to the crowd, lifted one hand for silence, and opened his mouth to tell them everything he had learned in the dark hours of the morning, when the hall lights flickered once, twice, and the sound system popped, as if someone had pulled a cord. The screens at the back of the hall lit up on their own. A video started to play. Juliana's voice filled the room. "Thank God he's gone, Johnson." The lawyer's folder was still open in Juliana's trembling hands when the giant screens at the back of the hall flickered. Everyone froze, a pop of static, a short hiss. Then, suddenly, Juliana's own voice, smooth and unashamed, filled every corner of the golden hall. "Thank God he's gone, Johnson. Congratulations to us." Her words boomed over the speakers. The crowd turned their heads like one body, staring at the glowing screens. On the screen, Juliana appeared, recorded earlier at the airport lounge, leaning close to Johnson. She smiled as she spoke, her lips painted red, her tone sharp with excitement. "All the company's documents are in my possession already. Tomorrow, we'll change the ownership, get married, and fly to the Maldives for our honeymoon." The hall erupted. Gasps, shouts, curses. Elderly relatives covered their mouths. Younger cousins pulled out their phones to record the scandal. Business partners stared in disbelief, whispering about betrayal, about shame, about greed. Juliana's knees buckled. She turned to Johnson, eyes wide, as though begging him to explain, to deny, to save her. But Johnson had gone pale, his lips pressed thin, his hand slipped quietly out of hers. The recording ended with her fateful line about the casket. "This golden one is too expensive. We'll return it and bury him in a cheaper one." The screens went black. Silence pressed down on the hall like a heavy blanket. Then, slowly, all eyes shifted back to the man who should have been dead but was standing tall, Johnathan Obinna. Juliana dropped the divorce papers. They scattered across the marble floor like fallen leaves. "Johnathan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "It's not what you think. Please, let me explain." Johnathan raised one hand. "Enough." The single word was soft, but it cut through the hall like thunder. He took 2 steps closer, his face heavy with pain. 10 years, Juliana. 10 years I stood by you. 10 years I watched you cry at every negative doctor's report. 10 years I kept my vows, for better or worse, even when the world called me weak for not taking another wife. I never stopped believing in us. His voice cracked. Tears burned his eyes. "And this is how you repay me? With him? With plans to erase my name before my body is even cold?" Juliana sank to her knees, her expensive gown pooling around her. Mascara smeared down her cheeks. "I was lonely, Johnathan. I felt useless. You don't know what it's like for everyone to look at you as a failure because you can't give a man a child. Johnson, he made me feel wanted." The hall gasped again. Jonathan's shoulders stiffened. Sam, who had been silent all this time, stepped forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "Wanted? Is that what you call betrayal? He wanted your husband's wealth. That's all?" Juliana shook her head violently. No, that's not true." But Johnson finally spoke, his voice low, almost regretful. "Juliana, you should stop. They know the truth now." Her head snapped toward him. "Johnson, what do you mean? Tell them you love me. Tell them you—" He looked at her, and in his silence lay the worst betrayal of all. Juliana's chest heaved. She reached for his hand, but he stepped back. Johnathan turned away for a moment, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. When he faced the crowd again, his voice was firm. "My goal was never to humiliate her. My goal was truth. And today, the truth has spoken louder than I ever could." He nodded at his guards. Immediately, 2 tall men in black suits stepped forward. They lifted Juliana to her feet, gently but firmly, and pulled Johnson beside her. The lawyer cleared his throat and read from the document still lying on the floor. According to the marriage contract, signed and witnessed 10 years ago, any party caught in adultery will forfeit all claims to joint property or inheritance. Mrs. Juliana Obinna, by your own confession and the evidence provided, you walk away with nothing. The crowd buzzed. Some clapped. Some murmured in pity. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Juliana wailed. "No, you can't do this to me, Johnathan. After everything, after all these years, please, don't throw me away." Jonathan's eyes shone with fresh tears, but his voice was steady. "You threw us away the moment you chose him. You buried this marriage long before you tried to bury me." Sam stepped beside his friend, his voice low but firm. "Take them out." The guards began to escort Juliana and Johnson toward the door. Cameras flashed wildly. Reporters scribbled notes. The scandal would fill every front page by morning. At the doorway, Juliana twisted in the guard's grip. Her voice rose in desperation. "Johnathan, I swear it was only weakness. Please, don't leave me with nothing." Johnathan closed his eyes. Pain etched across his face. "I gave you everything. My name, my trust, my heart. If that was nothing to you, then nothing is what you will have." The doors slammed shut behind her. The hall breathed again. Guests whispered, some cheering, others still in shock. Sam placed a hand on Jonathan's shoulder. "You did what you had to do. The whole world knows the truth now." But Johnathan didn't answer. He only stared at the golden casket, the one Juliana had called too expensive, and let tears run freely down his cheeks. Because beneath the anger, beneath the relief of truth revealed, there was grief. Grief for 10 wasted years. Grief for a woman he had loved despite her flaws. Grief for the quiet nights he had dreamed of children who never came. And grief for the part of himself that still, even now, wanted to forgive. Sam's voice broke through his thoughts. "Johnathan, are you ready? The press will want a statement. The board is waiting. You can't stay here." Johnathan shook his head. "Give me a moment." He walked slowly back to the casket. His hand rested on its golden edge. The crowd grew silent again, waiting, watching. Johnathan whispered, almost to himself, I lay in you pretending to be dead, but it is my heart she buried today. The hall held its breath. Then he turned around, his face hardening with a new kind of strength. But I will rise again. The crowd erupted in applause, their loyalty sealing around him like armor. Yet as the clapping grew louder, Johnathan's eyes drifted once more to the doors Juliana had been dragged through. Somewhere deep in his chest, a question twisted like a knife. Had he really lost her, or had he lost himself? The hall was still buzzing long after Juliana and Johnson had been dragged out. Phones flashed, social media feeds filled instantly with headlines. Billionaire rises from his own casket. Juliana Obinna betrays husband for fortune. The golden funeral that became a courtroom. But Johnathan Obinna stood in the center of it all, his face blank. The applause around him meant nothing. In his chest, his heart felt like an old drum, beating but empty. Sam leaned close, speaking softly. We need to leave. This will only grow worse with the press here. Johnathan nodded. Yet as he stepped forward, a woman's voice rang out from the back of the hall. The crowd shifted. An older woman in a simple blue Ankara gown pushed her way through. Her eyes were wet, her cheeks streaked with tears. It was Mama Nkechi, Juliana's aunt, the one who had raised her after her parents died. Chief, she cried, falling to her knees before him. Please, have mercy. Juliana is my blood. She made mistakes, yes, but don't disgrace her before the whole nation. Do not let the press destroy what little is left of her dignity. The hall grew silent again. Everyone wanted to hear his reply. Johnathan looked at the kneeling woman, his lips pressed tight. Mama Nkechi, this is not my doing. Juliana disgraced herself. She chose greed. She chose betrayal. What mercy can be given when the knife was driven into my heart by her own hand? The old woman sobbed louder. You are still her husband. No. His voice cracked like thunder. She buried that title the moment she sold me for wealth. He turned his back, walking out with Sam at his side. Outside, the night air was thick with the sound of reporters shouting questions. Cameras followed his every move. Security struggled to hold them back as microphones stretched toward his face. Chief Obinna, what is your next move? Will you press charges against your wife? Are you stepping down as CEO? Johnathan kept his gaze forward. He said nothing until he was safely inside the black SUV waiting by the curb. The doors slammed shut, muting the chaos outside. For the first time since rising from the casket, he let out a long, shuddering breath. His head fell into his hands. Sam sat beside him, quiet. He had known Johnathan since their school days in Enugu, before the billions, before the empire. He knew when silence was the safest answer. After a long pause, Johnathan whispered, Do you think I was too harsh? Sam shook his head. Harsh? No, my brother. She was the one who wanted your coffin cheaper so she could pocket the change. You showed her mercy by not having her arrested on the spot. Johnathan gave a weak laugh that died quickly. And yet, I still feel as if I am the guilty one. Back at the mansion in Banana Island, the staff lined the gates, their faces full of fear and curiosity. They had heard the whispers, the rumors, the betrayal. Inside the living room, the golden chandelier cast a harsh light. Johnathan dropped heavily into a sofa. The silence of the house felt heavier than the noise of the funeral hall. His lawyer entered, carrying another folder. Chief, I have already drafted the annulment and property division papers. With your approval, we can file them in court by tomorrow morning. That will ensure her claims to the company are permanently revoked. Johnathan rubbed his forehead. Do it. But quietly. I do not want the children in our foundation hearing of this scandal before the news does. The lawyer nodded and left. Sam poured 2 glasses of water and handed one over. Drink. You need strength. Johnathan took it, his hands trembling. After a sip, he stared at the liquid as if answers lay inside. Sam, do you believe in second chances? Sam tilted his head. Why do you ask? Because part of me still wants to hear her explain. Still wants to believe this was all a mistake, a weakness, a lapse. 10 years is not a small thing to erase. Sam's jaw tightened. And what about the video? The words that came from her own lips. Was that weakness too? Or truth? Johnathan said nothing. His silence was louder than words. Meanwhile, at a small hotel across town, Juliana in a darkened room. Her makeup was smeared, her wig slightly askew, but her fury burned brighter than ever. Johnson stood by the window, pacing. We need to leave Lagos. Tonight. The story is everywhere already. By morning, the EFCC might come after me. Juliana shot him a sharp glare. Leave? Just like that? You want me to crawl out of this city like a dog? Never. I am still his wife. Johnson scoffed. His wife? After what happened tonight, he will never take you back. You've lost him and his empire. Juliana's eyes hardened. Not yet. He still loves me. I saw it in his eyes. He can't erase me so easily. And if he tries... She leaned forward, whispering coldly, then I will erase him. Esav, Johnson froze, staring at her. Juliana, what are you saying? She smiled, though it was the smile of a woman broken and desperate. No empire survives without cracks. And I know all of his, every secret, every weakness. Back in the mansion, Johnathan finally rose from the sofa. He walked to the wide balcony overlooking the city lights. Lagos stretched endlessly before him, alive with honking cars, glowing skyscrapers, and restless people. He spoke without turning. Sam, do you know why I faked my death? Sam stepped beside him. To test her love. No. Jonathan's voice was heavy. To test myself. To see if my empire could survive without me. To see if the people I trusted would stand or fall. And tonight, I learned both answers. He clenched the railing, his knuckles white. The empire can stand. But I am the one who is falling. Sam placed a hand on his shoulder. Then let me carry you until you rise again. For the first time that night, Johnathan allowed himself to weep openly. Tears streamed down his cheeks, washing away the mask he had worn all evening. But even as he cried, far away in that hotel room, Juliana was already plotting her return. And this time, it would not be with tears or apologies, but with fire. The mansion was quiet, too quiet. By morning, the headlines had spread like wildfire across Nigeria and beyond. Every radio station, every news channel, every gossip blog carried the same story. Billionaire Chief Obinna fakes death, catches wife's betrayal live at funeral. Some laughed at Juliana's downfall, others pitied her. But for Johnathan, the noise of the outside world only deepened the silence within his heart. He sat alone in his study that morning, surrounded by shelves of old books and files that told the story of his empire. The golden casket stood in one corner, covered with a white sheet. He couldn't bring himself to move it yet. His lawyer entered again, bowing respectfully. Chief, the annulment papers are ready. Once you sign, her rights to your assets will be completely erased. Jonathan's hand hovered over the pen. He picked it up, but then set it down again, staring at the papers without a word. Sam, leaning against the desk, broke the silence. Why do you hesitate, Johnathan? She betrayed you in front of the whole nation. Sign it, and be free. Jonathan's lips trembled. Sam, love does not vanish in one night. It lingers, even when poisoned. Sam frowned. And that poison will kill you if you let it linger. Don't be weak, my brother. Don't let her destroy you again. Johnathan pressed his palms together, whispering, Then why does my heart still ache for her? Across town, Juliana wasn't weeping anymore. She was a storm gathering strength. She sat before a mirror in the hotel room, carefully reapplying her makeup. Her red lips curved into a bitter smile as she spoke to her reflection. They think I am finished. They think I am a shameful wife cast away. They forget I know his secrets. Johnson, pacing nervously behind her, muttered, Juliana, you are drawing attention. Reporters are already searching for you. If you're caught, your life is ruined. She turned slowly, her eyes sharp. My life? Or yours? Don't forget you promised me a new future. You whispered love in my ears, Johnson. You cannot run now. Johnson looked away, shame burning his face. I didn't plan for it to go this far. Juliana stood, towering over him, despite her fragile frame. You used me, didn't you? You wanted his wealth, but never me. When he didn't answer, her laughter rang cold. Then listen carefully. If I cannot have Johnathan, if I cannot return to his mansion, then I will drag him down from his throne. I will burn his empire with my own hands. Meanwhile, Johnathan decided to face the board of directors that afternoon. He couldn't hide forever. The boardroom was filled with men and women in sharp suits, their faces tense as he entered. Cameras clicked, recording the moment for the company archives. One board member, Chief Anayo, cleared his throat. Sir, first allow me to say we are relieved you are alive. But the scandal is everywhere. Investors are asking questions. They fear instability. Another added, "With respect, Chief, faking your death to test your wife. It was reckless. The market may punish us." Johnathan stood tall at the head of the table. "Gentlemen, ladies, I did not fake my death to play games. I did it to expose the truth hidden in my own house. If a man cannot trust his home, how can he trust his empire?" His words silenced them. He leaned forward. "Do not fear, I am alive. My empire is alive, and those who sought to poison it are now cut off. We will rebuild stronger, but know this betrayal has taught me something. From this day forward, no secret will hide in the dark. No lie will thrive in my company. If you stand with me, you stand for truth." The board members nodded, some reluctantly, but the power in his words steadied them. Sam, watching from the corner, smiled faintly. For the first time, Johnathan was not just a billionaire. He was a man reborn. But Juliana's fire was spreading. That night, she appeared on a talk show, her eyes red, but her voice controlled. She painted herself as the victim. "I was lonely," she said tearfully, facing the cameras. "My husband was always at meetings, always traveling. I begged for his love, but he gave his empire more attention than me. Yes, I made mistakes. But who wouldn't, when treated like a stranger in her own home?" The audience clapped softly. The interviewer leaned in. "So you're saying you were neglected?" Juliana nodded, a single tear sliding down her cheek. "Neglected, abandoned. I only wanted to be loved. Instead, I was shamed before the whole nation. Does a woman deserve that?" The clip went viral. Sympathy began to grow among some viewers. Hashtags trended. "Justice for Juliana" and "Lonely Wives Matter." When Johnathan saw the video later that night, his heart twisted again. Sam slammed the table. "Don't believe her lies, Johnathan. She's manipulating the people. Don't let her crawl back into your heart." But Johnathan whispered, "And yet, the nation listens. What if they turn against me?" 2 nights later, the storm came to his mansion's gates. Protesters gathered, some carrying signs, some shouting for Juliana's dignity. News vans lined the street. Sam stormed into Johnathan's study. "This is her doing. She's twisting the story to make you the villain. We must respond, or you'll lose everything." And it was weary. Johnathan rose slowly from his chair, his face weary. "Then I will face her. No more hiding, no more silence. If she wants war, let her stand before me again." Sam frowned. "And if she comes not with tears but with fire?" Johnathan's eyes hardened. "Then I will show her the strength of a man who rose from his own casket. I will not fall again." He walked to the window, watching the angry crowd outside. His heart pounded not with fear, but with the weight of what was coming. Because somewhere out there, Juliana was not finished. She was waiting, sharpening her lies, preparing her next move. And when she struck again, it would not just be his marriage at risk, but the very empire he had built with his life. The rain poured heavily over Lagos that evening, drumming against the marble walls of Johnathan Obinna's mansion. Outside the gates, the crowd had not dispersed. Protesters waved placards, some reading, "Justice for Juliana," others declaring, "No more lies." Reporters stood under umbrellas, waiting for the next dramatic chapter in the Billionaire saga. Inside, Johnathan sat at the long dining table, his hands clasped, his eyes hollow. The golden chandelier above flickered faintly, as if the storm itself had crept into the house. Sam paced behind him, restless. "They will not stop until she appears again," Sam said bitterly. "This is her game now. She's stirring the crowd, painting herself as a victim. If you don't fight back, she'll ruin you in the eyes of the people." Johnathan raised his head slowly. "Then let her come. I will not run anymore." As if on cue, the front doors burst open. The guards struggled to hold back Juliana, but she pushed past them with the fire of a woman possessed. Her gown was drenched with rain, clinging to her figure, and her eyes shone with both fury and triumph. Cameras from outside pushed through the doorway, capturing every second. "Johnathan Obinna," she shouted, her voice echoing against the walls. "You humiliated me before the world. Tonight, I will speak, and the world will know who you truly are." Gasps filled the hall as board members, lawyers, and aides who had gathered to shield Johnathan suddenly found themselves witnesses to yet another storm. Juliana stepped closer, raising her hand dramatically. "You abandoned me, your wife, for your empire. You made me feel like a shadow in my own home." And when I fell into weakness, you trapped me, exposed me, and destroyed me before our people. Tell them, Johnathan, are you not guilty too? Did you never neglect me?" The cameras zoomed in on Jonathan's face. He stood slowly, his tall frame commanding silence. His eyes glistened, but his voice was calm. "Yes, Juliana," he said, each word heavy with sorrow. "I worked too much. I was gone too often. I did not give you the love you deserved. That was my failure." The crowd murmured. Some nodded. Juliana smirked, thinking she had won. "But," Johnathan continued, his tone rising, "my failure was not betrayal. My hands may have been empty of affection, but they were never stained with lies. You, Juliana, you chose greed. You planned to bury me alive, not only in a coffin, but in shame." He snapped his fingers. The lawyer stepped forward, placing a small projector on the table. The screen lit up with bank records, millions secretly transferred to Johnson's account. Then another clip played, a recording of Juliana and Johnson laughing, planning to change the company's ownership after Jonathan's death. Gasps erupted. Some board members covered their mouths. The reporters scrambled to capture every second. Juliana's face drained of color. This is false," she screamed, but her voice shook. "He fabricated this to frame me." Johnathan shook his head. "The truth does not need to shout, Juliana. It speaks for itself." The tension in the hall reached its peak. Juliana collapsed to her knees, tears mixing with rain still dripping from her hair. For a brief moment, the mask of fury slipped, revealing a broken woman beneath. "I loved you, Johnathan," she cried, "but I was drowning in loneliness. You left me every night for boardrooms and flights. I wanted to feel alive again. Johnson gave me what you refused." Jonathan's chest tightened. For a second, pain flickered in his eyes, but he steadied himself. "Love is not built on betrayal, Juliana. Love waits, love endures. You chose a shortcut paved with lies, and now the road ends here." Sam stepped forward, signaling the guards. "Take her away." The guards moved closer, but Juliana suddenly sprang up, her voice rising above the storm. "You may silence me, but you will never forget me. I know every crack in your empire, Johnathan. If you think tonight is the end, you are mistaken. I will rise again, and when I do, you will fall." The guard seized her, dragging her toward the door as she struggled and screamed. The cameras caught every moment her wild eyes, her desperate cries. When the doors slammed shut, silence fell. The storm outside raged louder than the room itself. Johnathan closed his eyes and drew a deep breath. Then, for the first time in days, he turned to face the reporters directly. "You have all witnessed my shame," he began, his voice steady. "Yes, I was betrayed by the woman I loved, but I will not let bitterness rule me. I will not let lies define me. I stand before you alive, and I will rise again stronger. My empire was not built on a marriage. It was built on truth, on trust, on the sweat of thousands of workers who believed in my vision. To them, I owe everything. And to them, I promise this betrayal will not break me." The reporters scribbled furiously. The board members nodded, some even clapping softly. Sam, standing at his side, whispered, "Now you speak like a true king." Later that night, when the crowd had thinned and the mansion was quiet again, Johnathan walked into his study. The golden casket still stood in the corner, a haunting reminder of how it all began. He approached it slowly, running his hand over the polished lid. His reflection stared back at him, weary but alive. "I buried my past inside you," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "The man who loved blindly, the man who ignored the cracks in his home. Tonight, that man is gone." Tears slid down his cheeks, but his lips curved into a determined line. "I rise now, not for her, not for pity, but for the future." Outside, the storm finally began to ease. The thunder faded, and the night grew calm. But far across the city, in a dimly lit hotel room, Juliana sat by the window, her eyes blazing with vengeance. "This is not the end," she murmured. "Not for me, not for him." The camera of the night seemed to zoom out, Lagos glowing under the fading storm, one man vowing to rebuild, and one woman plotting her return. And so, though the casket was closed, the battle of love, betrayal, and empire was far from over. The scandal that shook Lagos began to fade with time, but the wounds it left in Juliana's life only grew deeper. The crowds no longer chanted her name. The hashtags that once demanded justice for Juliana disappeared into silence. What remained was emptiness and cold. Juliana had thought Johnson would stand by her after the storm. He had whispered promises in the dark. A new life, mansions, cars, freedom from the shadow of Johnathan Obinna. But one by one, those promises unraveled into dust. It started with a simple discovery. Juliana had tried to move into one of the mansions Johnson had gifted her during their affair. But at the lawyer's office, she was met with icy stares and cruel paperwork. The deeds were not in her name. Every house, every car, every account was in Johnson's. She rushed to his home, her SUV parked in the driveway. "Johnson, tell them it's mine. Tell them I own it," she cried, clutching his sleeve like a drowning woman. Johnson peeled her hands off with disgust. "Juliana, stop embarrassing yourself. Did you really think I'd put assets worth billions in your name? You were a distraction, nothing more." Her knees weakened. "But you said you loved me. You said—" He cut her off with a cruel laugh. "Love? That word was only bait. I wanted Obinna's throne, and you delivered his secrets to me like a fool." When she tried to fight, Johnson took her to court, accusing her of false claims. The evidence was overwhelming, the judges unyielding. She lost everything. The houses, the SUV, even her dignity. Outside the courtroom, reporters swarmed her. Flashes blinded her tear-streaked face as she whispered, "I thought I had seen someone better. I was wrong." It was the lowest point of her life. And yet, even lower moments waited in the shadows. When word reached Johnathan about Johnson's betrayal, he was at his office in Ikoyi, reviewing documents. Sam relayed the news with a smirk. "Your wife, or rather, your former wife," Sam corrected himself, "has been stripped bare. Johnson played her like a drum. She is ruined." Johnathan said nothing at first. He closed the file before him, leaned back, and stared out the window at the Lagos skyline. The city was alive, bustling, as though untouched by the private wars of hearts. Finally, he spoke. His tone was calm, almost detached. "That is the price of betrayal. She threw away love for glitter, only to find rust. She hurt me, yes, but in the end, she hurt herself more." Sam nodded approvingly, but Jonathan's eyes glistened. Somewhere deep inside, the memory of Juliana's laughter still lingered, haunting him. Yet he did not dwell. He turned back to his work, his empire demanding his strength. Life has a way of surprising even the broken-hearted. Months later, during an economic summit at Eco Hotel in Victoria Island, Johnathan met Natalia. She was not flashy like the socialites who hovered around him. Natalia was elegant, with a sharp mind and a calm smile. As a bank executive, she spoke with authority about global finance, but her eyes carried a warmth that disarmed him. They met again at a private dinner hosted by the central bank. Natalia laughed easily at his dry jokes, and for the first time in years, Johnathan felt the heaviness in his chest ease. Sam noticed. "Careful, my brother," he teased later. "You've just survived one storm. Don't sail into another." But Johnathan only smiled. "This is different. With her, I don't feel like I'm defending my empire. I feel human again." Months turned into a year. Their friendship blossomed into love, quiet and steady. When Johnathan proposed, Lagos itself seemed to pause. The wedding was extravagant, the kind of event that dominated headlines for weeks. Banana Island glittered with lights as dignitaries, celebrities, and foreign investors arrived. The hall was adorned with gold and crystal, violins filling the air. Johnathan stood tall in a white agbada embroidered with gold, his red cap crowning him like a king. Natalia glowed in a gown of lace and pearls, her veil flowing like river mist. But among the hundreds of guests, hidden at the very back, sat Juliana. She wore a simple gown, her hair tied in a scarf, her face bare of makeup. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she watched the man she once called hers vow eternal love to another woman. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, the hall erupted in applause. Johnathan kissed Natalia's hand tenderly, and Juliana buried her face in her palms. In that moment, she realized the depth of her folly. She had destroyed herself, trading gold for dust, love for lies. And now, she could only watch from the shadows as life moved on without her. Her life shrank into a modest rented room with peeling walls and a creaky bed. The once glamorous Juliana, who had paraded diamonds and SUVs, now fetched water in buckets and cooked with a kerosene stove. Every time she opened the newspapers or switched on the TV, she saw Johnathan and Natalia signing contracts, cutting ribbons at new company branches, smiling side by side. Her tears came unbidden. She whispered to the empty room, "That could have been me. If only I had been patient. If only I had been faithful." But regrets were powerless. The walls around her heard her cries, but the world did not care. Yet even in his newfound joy, Jonathan's journey was not free of trials. Natalia and he faced whispers from society when, years into their marriage, they remained childless. At board meetings, subtle glances questioned his legacy. At home, nights were filled with quiet prayers. But unlike Juliana, Natalia never blamed him. She held his hand, whispering, "If children come, we will rejoice. If they don't, we still have each other." Her loyalty steadied him. Together, they weathered storms of rumor and gossip. Their love tested but unbroken. Then, 6 years into their marriage, Natalia woke one morning with trembling hands and shining eyes. She held out a test strip, her voice breaking. "Johnathan, I am pregnant." For the first time in decades, Johnathan fell to his knees, tears pouring freely. He kissed her belly, laughing and weeping. "God has remembered us. Natalia, he has remembered us." 9 months later, the hospital was filled with anticipation. Nurses rushed, doctors whispered, and Sam paced outside, praying aloud. When the cry of newborns finally pierced the air, Johnathan burst into the room, his agbada hastily thrown over his shoulders. Natalia, pale but radiant, smiled weakly as she held out 2 tiny bundles wrapped in soft white cloth. "Meet Jerry and Jacob," she whispered. Johnathan took them in his arms, his tears soaking their foreheads. "My sons, my blood, my future." His voice cracked. "I thought betrayal had ended me, but here I stand, holding the proof that love and patience conquer all." Sam clapped him on the back, his own eyes wet. "From casket to cradle, Johnathan, you are living proof of resurrection." News of the twins spread like wildfire. The nation celebrated, investors sent gifts, and the company declared a holiday. Juliana, sitting in her dim room, watched the televised announcement. She saw Johnathan cradling his sons, Natalia beside him glowing with triumph and grace. Her tears blurred the screen. She reached out as if to touch it, whispering, "Those boys could have been mine. That joy could have been mine." If you went to the lower beak, but it was too late. She had lost it all: her husband, her wealth, her dignity. And now, even her dreams of motherhood mocked her in silence. That evening, as the mansion overflowed with guests celebrating the twins, Johnathan slipped away to his study. He stood once more before the golden casket, still preserved as a strange monument in the corner. He placed his sons gently in their cribs nearby and whispered, "This is the full circle. From death to life, from betrayal to blessing. Juliana buried me once, but love has raised me again." He kissed his sons' foreheads and smiled. "And this time, nothing will destroy us." The storm outside was gone. The sky was clear, the stars bright over Lagos. Inside the mansion, laughter filled the air, children cried, and life moved forward. But in a small room far away, Juliana wept alone, her crown of ashes heavy on her head, and with tears she realized how greed destroyed her. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.